point, what we are going to be doing is 16 flying geese and some half square triangles. These are the flying geese that we're going to make, and these are 3-color flying geese. Okay, so the flying geese starts again with a 5.5 inch by 5.5 inch square that we cut on the diagonal, and then 3 1/8 inch squares that we cut in half. For this, we are doing 8 of this color and 8 of this color. So the only difference is that the smaller triangles are switched. So these are done with fabric number 12. You've cut 4 5.5 inch squares, so you have 16 of these, and then you have 8 each of the blue squares and the pink squares, and you've cut those in half, so you have 16 of the sides. Now, when I do this, I give myself 8 centers, 8 centers, 8 pinks, 8 blues, 8 blues, 8 pinks, and I set them up right next to my sewing machine that way. Okay, and when I do this, I always sew the right triangle on first. So I just grab one of these, run it through my machine, grab a second one, run it through until I've done all 8 with the blue on the right, and then I start with the pinks. And then I do another 8. So now I have 16 of these. I cut them apart. I stack up the blues again with the pink corners, flip everything upside down because that's how I work when I sew. I've pressed, right? And I've pressed all in the same direction because we're doing that, chasing the seams. I'm going to put the pink on here. If you are having trouble feeding your first piece in there because of the point on the triangle, you can do what I call a thread mouse, which is just a little piece of fabric that you start sewing on, run it through your machine a little, and then once this is going, for some reason, it's like magic. It allows the second piece to go through, especially if you have a point, without mangling that point. You have 8 flying geese with the pink on the right. You've got 8 flying geese with the blue on the right. And the next thing you're going to do is you're going to sew together the blues. And then you're going to start sewing them together into rows. Oh, this way, geese, geese. And you're going to make yourself 4 rows. Now these rows should be 16.5 inches. So you got these, we're going to put them on the side. These fabrics were cut at 4.5 inches by 4.5 inches for half square triangles. We've marked the center. We have sewn 1/4 inch on each side. And we're going to cut these open, and we are going to square them down to 3.5 inches by 3.5 inches. So when we do that, we're going to line up that diagonal with the center. We're going to trim one side, flip that over, drop that into the 3.5 inch by 3.5 inch, and keep trimming. Fabric number 7. The instructions have you cut a 16.5 inch by 1.5 inch strip. Go ahead when you do this, cut it 1.5 inches width of fabric, leave it at the 22.5 or the 22 inch, because all you're going to do is sew this, the geese side down onto this fabric. And once that's done, you can trim it to our 16.5 inch by 16.5 inch block. We're going to sew those to the sides. So part of the reason why mine is not lining up properly is this isn't done with seam allowances yet, because I haven't sewn it together properly. But once this is all sewn together into the proper size, these should fit exactly onto the sides. 16.5 by 16.5. Your corners are going to get sewn onto your top and bottom pieces. So we have these pieces here, right, that are sewn together, that are your tops and your bottoms. But before I sew the top and the bottom on, I'm going to sew these corners onto the edge. So when this is completed, my top and bottom pieces are going to be made with this strip and the two corners on the side. After this is done, you have 1.5 inch strips. The pattern asks you to cut, I think, 24.5 inches. Go ahead and cut these 26. So from the piece that you get, it asks you to cut a piece that's 7 inches by 24.5. Go ahead and cut it 7 inches by 25.5. Give yourself a little room. Once you've sewn this piece should measure, cross our fingers, approximately 24.5 by 24.5. I will be really honest, at this point, if you are 1/4 of an inch off, you're still fine. What you're going to want to do when you put this on is take a little smaller bite in your seam allowance to give yourself a little room, okay? If you are a little large, you can take a little bigger bite out of your seam allowance on this strip to get closer to that, when this is done with these on, 26.5 by 26.5 center square. I think that's right. 24.5 by 24.5 center square. Sorry, 24.5. So what you want to do is sew on the side, trim your edges, sew on the other side, trim your edges, and then do your top and bottom. And give yourself that room. Give yourself that room because you can always trim down, but it's much harder to stretch to make it bigger. And we'll see you next month.